Good evening. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, March 20th, 2018, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at City Hall and Council Chambers. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Ms. Seeliger?
Here.
Ms. Vendale?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Thompson? Ms. Thompson is here, I know, so she will be here shortly. Ms. Morioni? Same thing. Mr. Rodriguez?
Presente.
Mr. Balfons?
Here.
Ms. Clater?
Here.
Ms. Farah? Is not here. Ms. Uri?
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski is not here, and Chair Tabarro.
Here. And Ms. Power-Rakowski did let me know she's feeling under the weather this evening and won't be joining us. And as the superintendent stated, Ms. Thompson and Ms. Morioni are out in the hallway and will be joining us shortly. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And this evening, I'm actually going to make an appointment of a pro tem to lead the meeting. I'm appointing board member Mark Balfons as pro tem for the meeting. This appointment is being made as part of a program to afford other board members an opportunity to gain experience chairing meetings. And so at this time, I would ask Mr. Balfons to switch places with me. Don't forget your nameplate. And he will continue with the remainder of the chair's report.
Thank you. So I'd like to go into the report of the chair. First, the members of the board, the superintendent and staff will attend the 2018 Equality Maine Gala on March 24th. The honorees at the gala will include Doug Kimmel, the Consumers for Affordable Healthcare, and our very own Tim Atkinson, who will be receiving the F.E. Pent-Large Ally Award for his work on the school district's transgender policy. Another announcement, the superintendent will report on the comprehensive emergency preparedness plan in the school district in the near future. The board, the superintendent, and staff will look at ways to improve that plan. And finally, school board members, the group photo will be at the next school board meeting. Report of students. Portland High, Isabel Clater.
Hello. First of all, I want to just wish everybody happy spring. I know it doesn't feel like it, but technically it is springtime. So I'm Isabel Clater, and I'm the representative from Portland High School. And the last time I reported out to you was right after winter break, so a lot has changed since then. In February, we hosted a student-led spoken word night where students could come and share poetry, original readings, or any other prose that they wanted to share with other students and some staff members. And then more recently participated in the Maine Regional Drama Festival at Yarmouth High School, where senior Aiden Richmond directed the play Variations on the Death of Trotsky, which I hear was very entertaining. Also in February, almost 100 students from Portland High School went out to Reiki and Riverton to read to elementary school students there as part of the Read Across America program. I think I heard it was a really cool opportunity for high schoolers, and I'm sure the elementary schoolers were really impressed by everyone from Portland who came. I think it really speaks to the connectedness of the schools here. Also at the end of February, the members of the Black Student Rights Club held a celebratory breakfast, as February was Black History Month. And then the winter sports season wrapped up with spectacular records for both girls basketball and hockey. Basketball made it to the northern semifinals and ended with a 13-7 record, while hockey had a mind-blowing season, going from 1-17 last year to 14-6 this year. So I really want to shout out them and all of our winter athletes and wish everyone good luck in the upcoming spring season. I also want to congratulate Portland senior Tasha Tracy for winning a Rotary Club scholarship. We're very proud of her. Last week, Portland Student Council held the first annual Winter Carnival, which was open to all students and included games, food, and music. We raised money to be donated to a fund for the survivors of the shooting down in Florida. And it also so happened that this carnival was held on Thursday, which is when we in Portland celebrated the National School Walkout. Almost 500 students from Portland High School assembled on the steps of City Hall on Thursday, where we were joined by, I think, around 200 students from Baxter to express our solidarity with the students down in Parkland and the work that they've been doing to enact changes in the gun laws here. It was really powerful to be there as a student and to see all of the educators, the parents, the media come out and support us, and I want to personally thank the board and all of the Portland schools for supporting our actions. Looking forward, parent-teacher conferences will be held Thursday and Friday, and sophomores will be participating in Seeds of Peace dialogues, which Tiana Yuri is very familiar with. Juniors are preparing for the Maine Educational Assessment for Science as well as the in-school SAT, both of which will be held in the first week of April. And seniors are closing in on their very last quarter of their high school careers and starting to make decisions regarding colleges and other post-secondary plans. And I can already tell that they're going to represent Portland very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Balfons. I would like to begin by recognizing what we just heard about, which is the exemplary civic engagement by our students last week. On Wednesday, even though we had no school because of the storm, many students and staff convened at Monument Square to join with their peers nationwide to commemorate the 1-month anniversary of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas killings. Wednesday's scheduled school intermission was rescheduled for Thursday, our first day back. Students and staff who wished to participate at all of our middle and high schools did so, and this was a tremendous opportunity for our students to become engaged in an issue that has, as you know, very real significance for their generation. As a learning institution, we're dedicated to helping students to understand how they can bring about change. And this was a most teachable opportunity, and I believe that our students learned a great deal. I personally hope that they will continue to engage around responsible gun control policies, and I'm hopeful that their energy, creativity, and their authenticity will be able to sway the minds of those who have resisted common sense policies in the past. I would like to recognize our school leaders for their commitment to student voice and civic engagement. I would especially like to recognize Assistant Superintendent Jeannie Crocker for bringing people together to coordinate our response. And I would also like to thank and recognize the City of Portland, particularly Portland Police Chief Mike Soschik and his staff for their support in ensuring that we had a safe, supervised opportunity for students to express their constitutional right to free speech. On Thursday evening, I was proud to be a speaker at the Maine Educators United Against Gun Violence rally here at City Hall. I was joined by gubernatorial candidate Mark Eves, Wayne Fleet headmaster Jeff Wagg, and teachers Jim Millard and Lindsay Kaplan, also King teacher Bobby Shaddix, and Wayne Fleet students Tia Walla and Hannah Delaney, as well as Chief of Police Mike Soschek, to call for true school safety measures. I was pleased to see many other educators join us for this event, and I hope that they too will remain engaged in the month and years to come. Again, today there was another tragic shooting event in Maryland. Clearly, this is an issue that needs to remain in our consciousness. I would also like the board and public to know that based On our discussion around the gun control resolution at the last meeting, Chair Terraro and I have agreed to schedule an executive session of the board at an upcoming meeting so that the board is fully versed in our current protocols and procedures. I would like to thank the approximately 20 parents who attended one or more of my Parent University lunchtime book club meetings at the Portland Public Library here downtown. We discussed the book iGen by author Jean Twenge, which looks at today's generation of post-millennial teens. Most of us in attendance are parents of iGen students, and there were a handful of parents of pre-iGen students. I know it was helpful for me to exchange thoughts and ideas with fellow parents, and I hope it was helpful for all involved. Because of the weather, we rescheduled last Wednesday's Parent University session on raising resilient girls. It is being rescheduled. Don't have a date yet. Our next Parent University activity is negotiating masculinity on Saturday, March 31st at Ocean Avenue School at 11 a.m. This is a Maine Boys to Men 2-hour adult workshop, deep dive into issues currently facing young people in our community. The training is designed to begin a conversation about how our current culture of toxic masculinity creates a system of gender-based violence that not only harms women, but also men and other gender identities. Some of the issues addressed by the training are gender identity, sexuality, consent, bystander intervention, and how to interrupt gender-based violence. This training is the first step in beginning a process of self-discovery and self-reflection necessary to challenge sexism and ultimately stand up as leaders to end gender bias, harassment, abuse, and violence. The 45-minute The Mask You Live In will be screened at 11 o'clock in the morning, followed by the workshop at noon. So if you want to watch the movie on your own, you can just join us at noon. Yesterday, I presented testimony to the Maine Legislature's Education Committee, asking them to vote against LD 2371, an act to amend career and technical education statutes. Implementation of this law will result in a $2 million revenue loss for the Portland Public Schools. My concern is that the Department of Education's process around this legislation has been opaque, and as a result, the OE implemented it in their preliminary budget projections as if they had authorization to do it. While I and many of the other people who were there support improved and more predictable and more nimble funding for CTE programs, it's clear to me that very few people understood the implications of this process and that it would be best for all involved to return to the existing funding system until there is a better understanding of the implications for changing it. I appreciate the leadership of Representative Dick Farnsworth, Portland's only member on the Education Committee, for his guidance and his advocacy on this issue. Next, I want to continue to update you on the regionalization plans. Board Member Morioni and I attended a briefing for board members last Friday with other board members from the Sebago Alliance districts. Ms. Morioni will share her impressions during the board members' concern section of the agenda, but in short, the process continues. We will be asking the board for authorization to participate in the submission of a Round 2 application to the DOE. If approval is granted and our application is subsequently approved by DOE, we will still need to go to the municipal voters to receive approval to participate in this regional effort. As I've said previously, the intent of the participating districts has been to identify areas where we can realize efficiencies and or improve the quality of our services. So as it stands now, there are 2 areas where I believe PPS will achieve those goals by joining this, and that is in the area of food service purchasing through the network and in coordinated professional development. There are other areas that we will continue to explore, such as ELL student intake and regional alternative services, but those services are not currently fleshed out at this time. We'll continue to explore all that's needed to submit a Part 2 application to DOE, and we'll continue to brief the board prior to asking for formal authorization to join in the application. In closing, I would like to call your attention to an article in the March 2018 Educational Leadership magazine, which I was supposed to bring with me and wave at this point, and I forgot. It's on my desk. But It's very cool. The article is penned by former East End Principal Marcia Gendron, as well as USM Professor Flynn Ross, and East End staff members Dan Nogar and Marge Queen. The article is entitled Helping Students Rise and Shine, describes the work that the entire East End community has done to, quote, put dessert first, end quote, and start the day with a huge variety of engaging and motivating activities. I know that many of you have had a chance to visit Rise and Shine over the years, but if you haven't, it is not to be missed. Congratulations to Dan, Marge, Marcia, and all of the East End staff who make every day at East End one to get up for. And this was not a part of my prepared remarks, but I cannot miss the opportunity. One of our amazing students, Ellen Manga, just won the Maine Arts Commission Poetry Out Loud in Waterville. My Maine geography impediments are showing themselves. He just won. It was amazing. He was up against great competition. So he is going as Maine's representative to the national competition, which will be on April 24th in Washington, D.C. So we're really, really excited for Alan, and you can't find a more deserving kid. So really, really happy. That concludes my report.
Thank you. For the Secretary, consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of March 6, 2018. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis? Ms. Trevorrow? Second by Ms. Trevorrow. Any questions on the motion? Any public comment? Any board discussion? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Motion passes. Report of the committees. Start with the Curriculum Committee.
Thank you, Pro Tem Balfonts. I just have to report that my apologies that it's not listed in the agenda, all the upcoming curriculum meetings, but I just want to point out we do have now between now and the end of the summer date set, but I'm just going to go, the ones that I'm sure of at the moment are April 10th will be the next one at 6 o'clock at Central Office, and then in May 22nd at 6 o'clock Central Office. They're not in our agenda, but we'll make sure for the next meeting they're all listed. But thank you.
Thank you. Operations.
Thank you, Chair. And before I give my report on Operations Committee, I wanted to just once again thank the students for their advocacy and their civic work last week on the walkout. You guys know I've been supporting you guys, and I'm so proud of what you've done. And I wish I can express to you guys what was going through my mind at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, and then again on Thursday when you guys had the opportunity. It's no secret how I feel about it. You guys know what's up. So, Operations Committee, right? I'd like to remind the public and my colleagues that the School Board's Operation Committee has agreed to postpone our meetings of February and March in order to accommodate for the added workload of the budget season. The members of this committee understand and agree to remain available in the event that the committee needs to meet for any urgent needs. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for Monday, April 16th, 6 p.m. at District Office, and of course an agenda will be posted in due time prior to that meeting. I'd also like to update the board and the public on the status of the 2019 CIP request approved by this board last year. You'll recall that our CIP request reflects priorities for projects that fall broadly into the categories including life safety, ADA compliance, alignment with other city projects, and alignment with the outcome of last year's referendum on the bond for renovating 4 elementary schools. Our request will be taken up by the City Council's Finance Committee as part of their process to review the entire city manager's recommended capital improvement plan general fund. We have copies of the city manager's recommended CIP for the board members to review, and I'll remind the public that this information is available through the portlandmaine.gov website. Board members will find our projects are highlighted on the list, and additional materials are included with short descriptions of the work for each project. The City Council Finance Committee is set to meet tomorrow, Wednesday, March 21st at 6 p.m. in City Hall Room 209 in order to review the City Manager's CIP request. I plan to be there, and I would encourage anyone who can attend that meeting to do so if possible. That is all for now, unless there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance.
Thank you. So the Finance Committee has met 3 times since the superintendent introduced his budget on Tuesday, March 6th. I wanted to express my appreciation for my colleagues, Lori Davis, Roberta Rodriguez, and Mark Balfons, for all the time that they've spent being a part of the committee review process. I wanted to, in lieu of a more broader update on where the Finance Committee's work is at, because tonight we'll have a workshop following this business meeting about where we are with the FY19 budget. What I will say, though, is the Finance Committee's timeline has shifted a little bit. We've added some meetings, so for you to know, the next meeting will be a joint meeting with our City Council's Finance Committee on Thursday, March 22nd, 5:30 at City Hall, room 209. We also have 2 more meetings as the school board finance committee on Tuesday, March 27th, which will include a public hearing at 6 p.m. At central office, room 234. And then the Finance Committee will also meet on Friday, March 30th at 5:30 to vote on the recommended FY19 budget, also at central office, room 234. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Policy, Legislative, Public Affairs.
Thank you, Pro Tem Chair Balfants. So we had a fabulous meeting on February 10th. It was a Saturday, and we had a good turnout for our first event. The Public Affairs Committee with Funding Our Future was the name of the event, and it was at Casco Bay High School, and we'll be planning more of those meetings, and we'll be updating the public as we have them scheduled and as they roll out with topics. And our next Policy Committee meeting, we have moved it up a little bit to 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, March 27th. We usually have it at 5:30 at our central office on Cumberland Avenue, but we've moved it up to 4:30 so that Finance Committee meeting is held at the same time. And of course, it's open to the public, and we allow some public comment if you would like to come to our next policy meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other committee and or member concerns? Ms. Davis?
Yes, I want to report that Hall Building Committee has not met, but the Hall Building initiative is definitely underway. We just, as a committee, received a monthly update, including pictures, and I'm sure that some of those will begin to spread their way through the rest of the community. But it's exciting. It's underway. I was out at Hall last week and took a picture, posted it to Facebook. It's amazing to see what we saw in flat drawings come to life, and to really see, for example, the thing that was particularly moving was that the committee decided very proactively to save a particular tree and to wrap the building by design around it. And you can really see how that has happened, because the building is there, the tree is there, and it's just such an exciting and wonderful opportunity for our community to have a state-funded school that most of the $28 million is coming from the state, a very limited, I think it's about 1.4 is coming from the local tax dollar, that will serve 558 students in the coming years, and beautifully. We're down to picking furniture and names, which leads me to my next announcement, which is the Hall Naming Review Panel is continuing to meet. We've had a meeting with teachers and staff. We've had a meeting with the PTO. We had a meeting with members of the public. And our next event is tomorrow night at 6:30 at Hall School, and that's Wednesday the 21st at 6:30, and that is a public hearing. Anyone is invited to come and let us know what they think about names, give us input, and then the committee, the review panel will meet after that to review the input that we have received thus far. I know a week ago we had almost 200 inputs, and lots of great names. So it will be an interesting discussion that we will try and sift down and bring to the board in a later meeting. So, but again, March 21st, 6:30, and you probably have a few hours left today if you haven't had any input yet, and there's a name that you're sure no one has told us about yet that you want to go online and do the input. And if for some reason you have trouble with the online form, my email address is also online. Just shoot me a quick email with your suggestion for a name. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports? Ms. Rodriguez? Ms. Morioni, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with what Superintendent Botana was saying about the Regional Services Center meeting that I attended with him, and just to say that I was very impressed by all the work. This actually was initially created back in 2004 with, and I'm not going to get the exact towns right, but South Portland, Westbrook, Bonnie Eagle, Gorham initially started working on regionalization service centers. Did I miss anyone? More or less. Anyhow, so this is actually Chapter 127, which comes from the state now, which is asking for districts to look more at regionalization and regionalization of service centers. So I was very impressed to see in the room, and I'm going to get this list wrong too, but it was also included Portland, Scarborough, Cape Elizabeth, lots of RSUs that unfortunately I don't know exactly which towns they were. But bottom line is all of Cumberland County right now, school districts are looking at potentially joining together for becoming a regional service center and collaborating through possible what they're calling menu of opportunities, which the superintendent talked about, including things like professional development. Looking at food service, exactly, thank you, food services. At this point, they haven't gone down into exactly what services they might all agree upon. They're beginning preparing the Part 2 of the application for the state. The DOE is asking this by July 1st, which all the districts in the room unanimously agreed that they would not be able to comply with that by July 1st. But that's okay because the commissioner is coming for a visit at the next meeting. And the steps that would need to take place, they have to complete an interlocal agreement, all of these districts. It also would come to the board for our approval. And then it also has to go out to voters for voter approval. So there's lots of steps, and at best, it might be ready for a November vote. And again, there's lots of work to be done by all the districts that may want to be included. So just stay tuned, and I appreciate having board representation at these meetings, because I think, again, this is something that the importance of this is looking for efficiencies and collaboration with other districts that may be beneficial to Portland. But thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Chair. So it is my pleasure to report that the newly formed Buildings Advisory Committee will meet for their initial meeting on March 29th, 6 p.m. at district offices. In the coming months and years, this committee will report to and advise the school board on the work related to overseeing the renovations of 4 Portland's elementary schools, and thus carrying out the will of the voters who supported the referendum on last year's ballot, and upholding the ongoing commitment from this board and the good people of Portland to providing healthy learning environments that are conducive to student success. As co-chair of this committee, I look forward to the work ahead and collaborating with this body and the many stakeholders throughout our city in order to further strengthen Portland Public Schools. On a side note, March 29th happens to be my birthday. And in lieu of presents or gifts, I offer the members of the committee to bring your dancing shoes, and maybe after we finish business, we'd have a little party. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, reports? On to consent items. Will the superintendent read the consent items, please?
Yes, Mr. Balfons. Ocean Avenue Elementary School received Target gift cards to purchase teacher wish list items from Kristen Pleacher of Portland. East End Elementary School received 37 student helmets from the Michael Goulet Foundation of Saco. And East End Elementary School also received a cash donation to be used as needed from Robert and Elizabeth Nake of Portland. So thank you very much to all of our contributors.
Thank you. Old business. There is no old business this evening. So we'll move on to new business. Consideration and action to appoint the 6th community member to the Buildings for Our Future Advisory Building Committee, as recommended by the board's appointment committee. Is there a motion? Mr. Rodriguez, is there a second? Ms. Thompson, will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yes, on February 27th, the board approved a slate of 6 candidates to serve as citizen representatives on the Buildings for Our Future Advisory Building Committee. And subsequent to the appointment of that slate of candidates, one of the appointees, Jennifer Hunter, resigned her membership. The Appointments Committee of the school board reconvened on March 6th at 5:30 p.m. at City Hall in executive session to review all of the applicants using the agreed-upon criteria that had been used for the appointment of the previous members of the Advisory Building Committee. The committee, after reviewing candidates, the committee selected Emily Figdor by a majority of the Appointments Committee as the at-large candidate based on these review criteria, and that's what we're asking you to act on today.
Any questions on the motion?
I'm going to add to it. And I just want to, as I did with the other slate members that we read before, I just want to read the answer that Ms. Figdor had to our question of explain why you want to be part of the building committee. Emily is the co-founder and director of Protect Our Neighborhood Schools and worked to advance and ultimately pass the 4-school bond starting in September of 2015. She's very committed in seeing the four projects through to completion. Emily is closely tied in to the 4 school communities and with the parents and community members who have worked for years to improve these school facilities. She has familiarized herself with each of the 4 school projects as currently envisioned by touring each of the 4 schools with the ad hoc committee and attending nearly every school board, ad hoc, and city council meeting and subcommittee meeting on the bond over the last 2.5 years. Emily has met extensively with the community and other stakeholders about the bond and is actively maintaining those relationships. She would like to ensure that the public is well informed about the work of the committee and has meaningful opportunities to contribute, which will lead to stronger projects. Emily is also the co-chair of the PTO at Reiki and the parent of a 1st grader and a 5th grader at Reiki. Thank you.
Any questions on the motion? None? Is there any public comment on the motion? Please state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Emily Hurley. I live at 30 Cushman in Portland. I have a daughter who attends Reiki school. I wanted to express my full and complete support for Emily's nomination to this board or committee. Emily and I have known each other for 4 years as neighbors across the street, but I was able to collaborate with her for the last 2 years on the school bond. She's incredibly organized, articulate, and able to synthesize huge amounts of data meaningfully and create action plans. I believe these skills will make her a significant asset to the building committee, in addition to these professional set of skills that will move this work forward. Her passion for these projects is clearly evident. She has committed such a great deal amount of time to understanding the scope of each project. It would seem advantageous to draw on her rich background knowledge as our city moves forward to the next projects. So thank you for considering my input.
Thank you. Please state your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Phil Steele. I live at 22 Clifford Street on the West End. I'm retired. I've lived here for 16 years. My kids, I have 2, much older, never went to Portland schools. I have no grandkids in the Portland schools. As a relatively young man, I was a teacher, and I believe passionately that a city is as good as its schools. I strongly support the superintendent's proposed budget. I've always supported the proposed budgets. I worked hard with Emily and many others, as you know, to pass the 4-school bond. I have no personal stake other than the fact that schools are critical to the existence of Portland. And Emily is the most knowledgeable person about these buildings, the need for renovation, and deserves to be on this committee. I'm glad that you have appointed her and strongly support that recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Eva Humanik. I live at 12 Merriam Street in Deering Center. And public speaking makes me nervous, so I have my notes. But I met Emily when my youngest was going into kindergarten at Longfellow. And we met over coffee to talk about the schools and to talk about the bond and how I could get involved. And so I know what it's like to work with Emily. She is empathetic. She listens. She isn't afraid to tell you her opinion, but she listens to yours. She is very professional, and she takes the time to really talk and work things out and listens to your ideas and talks about her ideas. And with our group for Protect Our Neighborhood Schools, there were like 10 or 12 of us with strong personalities who were really passionate about fixing the schools. And sometimes we didn't agree. Sometimes we had different ideas of what we wanted to do. And Emily was our leader, and she really listened to us. And I think that that type of person would truly be an asset to this committee. And I also wanted to say that Emily is really dedicated to the school bond, to the schools, just to fixing all 4 schools. She quit her job to focus on fixing the schools as our primary focus, and she has 2 kids. I don't know how she came up with the time to do all of the work that she did, but in addition to leading a group of 10 or 12 parents and community members on a campaign and using her skills, she also was out talking to the people of Portland, like every night, every week, for months. Thousands of people that she would knock on their doors to talk to and to share information with and connect with. And I think that that also is an asset to this committee. So I will let somebody else speak, but I appreciate that she's being nominated tonight. I also feel like Emily is a voice for a lot of the parents who worked on this campaign, and so we would be very fortunate to have, I guess, a voice or to maybe have some representation. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Aura Russell-Better, and I live at 8 Arcadia Street. I am a parent of a child at Presumpscott School, and I will have another future student there. I just wanted to share briefly that Emily is one of the smartest, toughest, and most skilled leaders that I've ever met and had the pleasure of working with over the past few years, which I certainly would not have been involved to the degree that I was if not for her expertise and passion that she inspired me with. This bond, as everyone here knows, would absolutely not have passed without her tireless efforts. And many of you know that I've been working on this for many, many years. We're only really at this place because of her countless hours and enormous sacrifices that she made. I know that she knows and cares about these 4 school communities. She's passionate. She's been a dogged advocate, and I feel that our students need her to continue on with this work to make sure that these projects get done. And so I just wanted to say that I strongly support her nomination and feel like she is the perfect person for this role. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Sir?
Hope you're enjoying that seat up there. It's a little different, isn't it? My name's Ethan Strimling. I'm the mayor of the city of Portland. I'm very pleased to be here tonight in support of the recommendation of the nominations committee. I really appreciate the hard work that this committee did. I know this has been a rough road to get to this point, but I think in putting Emily on this committee, that will be, I believe, the final piece that will make this puzzle work. Both well in terms of its process, but also I want to say for the community, as I think you know, Emily probably has more knowledge than anybody in the city about this project. I include myself in that. She became intimately involved in all of its details. I would call her to ask her sometimes, do you remember what it was that we discussed at this moment or that moment? And she would be able to recall it. So she has a remarkable memory around that. But more importantly, I think, is the community. And the community, as you can hear, really has a connection with Emily, a trust in Emily, and her being part of this process, I think, will really help greatly with that important component of getting this done, so the community feels like their voices are really part of it. There's a lot of different avenues in there where people have their voices, but Emily is somebody who is currently deeply trusted in this, and so I really appreciate again that this committee did this hard work of going back and bringing Emily's name forward, and I hope you will support it tonight. It will be a big step forward as we begin to rebuild these 4 schools. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Hello, John Thibodeau, 114 Clinton Street. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I hope you vote Emily onto this committee. Very important committee. What passed this fall was historic. Something that'll be impacted for generations in a really good way. And there's no person that's more responsible for that than Emily. By a long shot, I would say. And I think that's important. I think that needs to be taken into consideration. And just thinking about this too, in just government, state or local government, oftentimes with blue ribbon commissions or policy committees that are created, oftentimes it is the norm for a leader and an expert in a particular policy issue to be a leader on that actual blue ribbon committee or specialized committee. So I think it's completely appropriate and really needed. I think it would be a glaring absence if she was not on that committee. I also come at this from a little bit of a different perspective. Last spring, as this issue was pretty hot and heavy in front of the City Council, I was actually in somewhat of an adversarial position with Emily and disagreed on certain things, and we weren't friends yet. And we were on opposite sides in some ways. Once the campaign started, it was going to be on the referendum. We sat down and we met and we tried to figure out, can we work this out? Can we be allies on this? And I honestly didn't know. I think she probably didn't know either. And what I experienced over the next number of months was a great ally, a great partner. She was fantastic to work with, and I think that's that's proof of what can happen here as well, that people can put aside the past, move forward, and lead. That was my experience with her. And lastly, just the qualities that she has. I like to think of myself as a fairly capable person. I was chronically humbled by her capacity and skills and abilities. I've met some pretty accomplished people, and I don't know if I've met anyone as able as Emily. I think she'd be an enormous asset to your committee, and I really hope that you vote her on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any board discussion? Ms. Davis?
When I think back to the discussion we had in December 19th, where we talked about the composition of this committee, and we clearly differentiated between having parent representation and general public representation. And I have to say that I am concerned because what we have are 6 members of the general public, 5 of whom are parents. And that does not, in my view, really accomplish what we set out to do in terms of having wide and broad representation from the general public, most of whom are not parents of children in our schools. The exclusion of non-parents is of concern to me, because non-parents will not be excluded from paying the bills that will come due when tax time comes. So for that reason, I am going to oppose this nomination. A second reason is that while many people have spoken to protect our neighborhood schools and Emily's work, and she describes herself as the director of it, I want the public and the board to be clear. The Protect Our Neighborhood Schools is a political action committee. It's not a gathering of moms, housewives, that kind. It is a political action committee engaged in lobbying, actively lobbying this board as of yesterday. And for me, while we often ask for people who are involved to serve on advisory committees, in general, especially at the state level, we do not appoint lobbyists. And someone who directs and has funds at their disposition to lobby us, in my mind, is a lobbyist. And for that reason, I do not see Emily's appointment as appropriate. While many people have spoken to her strengths and what she has brought to the Political Action Committee, and in fact many of the people who spoke tonight are members of that Political Action Committee, I also, and the board also, received letters from other people whose portraits even hang in this room, who raised concerns. Emily is not universally admired or respected or seen as a positive force in our community. There are people who are extraordinarily concerned, whose personal experience has led them to a different conclusion than the folks we heard tonight. And that public input, coming from many people that I know and respect who have worked for Portland for decades, I found moving and, quite honestly, consistent with my own personal experience with Emily while she was the chair of the Portland Democratic City Committee, which unfortunately was not a positive experience. I did not experience the things that people described tonight. I'd experienced a very different person in her interactions with me. And so, in summary, for me, it really rests on those 3 things. We have not appointed a advisory board. The 6 people are not representative of the general public. We are appointing someone who is a lobbyist, who has funds at their disposal and uses them to buy Facebook ads and so on to push public opinion on matters before the board. I see that as a conflict of interest and inappropriate. And second, I'm going to respect the input that I received from other members of the public who urged caution, and that there probably, and I would, having reviewed the other applications, I think there were other members of the public who would have broadened our representation of the public and not come with sort of the divided report that Ms. Figdor presents us. So respectfully, I will be voting no on this nomination.
Any other discussion? So in the past, we have invited the nominee up to speak. After the board? Okay. After we vote. So at this point, all those in favor of appointing the 6th community member to the Buildings for Our Future Advisory Building Committee, as recommended by the board's appointment committee, please indicate. All those opposed? The motion passes 5-2. 7-2, excuse me. So, Ms. Figdor, you are invited up. You don't have to answer questions, or you can also speak, please.
Excuse me. I just want to say thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. I am really humbled by the public comment tonight. I want to recognize that the effort to pass the bond was the effort of so many different people. I was lucky enough to be part of the process, but the credit belongs to so many, and people were way too effusive tonight. So, but I really look forward to seeing the 4 projects through. I look forward to working with Ms. Davis and proving you wrong. And but I appreciate your candor, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Personnel? So there are no personnel items this evening. And board focus on educational issues. This brings us to the board focus on educational issues. Tonight's topic is snow day makeup considerations. Would the superintendent like to speak to this?
I would not. I would rather that Ms. Crocker do that. So.
That along with making the no school decisions 8 times this year, or decisions to have no school 8 times. There were some others. At any rate, I have given you in writing my thoughts, our thoughts, on moving forward with the remainder of winter, though we are in spring. And before I begin, I would just tell you, those of us of a certain age may remember, it's going through my mind, the CMP ad, another Maine snowstorm is upon us. We know that maybe Thursday is going to be problematic. So I'll just tell you that the bar is going to be a little higher, and we're going to tough this out and hopefully get to school. So there are copies at your desk. There are copies in the back of the room also. The state of Maine requires that public schools offer a minimum of 175 days. The Portland Public Schools calendar is based on 178 student days. Teachers and educational technicians work 2 days prior to the first student day of school and 1 day after the last student day of school. This year, the first day of work for teachers and educational technicians was August 28th, and the first day of school for students was August 30th. Inclement weather, including one wind, no power day, has resulted in 8 days when school has been canceled. These dates are October 30th, January 4th and 5th, January 17th, February 7th, March 8th, and March 13th and 14th.
Can I just interrupt you? I think it's amazing that you managed to synchronize it so that the 8 tolls of the clock happened as you ticked off those days. I don't know how you do what
do. Do you know how hard I had to work to get? I had to talk to the bell ringer. They're watching us live. I thought, I've messed up already. Why is he interrupting me? Our recent history shows that the last student day of school was June 22nd in 2017, June 17th in 2016, June 19th in 2015, June 20 in 2014, June 20 again in 2013, June 20 again in 2012, and June 17th in 2011. This is the part where we hold our breath and hope for no more snow. Several suggestions have been brought forward to end school earlier. These suggestions include changing Friday, April 13th, from a no-school day prior to April vacation to a school day. Doing that would both violate the Common Paths Calendar Agreement and cause a hardship for staff, students, and families that have already made vacation plans that include April 13th. It's reasonable to predict that we would be unable to secure sufficient substitutes to staff our classrooms, as we are unable to do so on Fridays throughout the entire school year. Another suggestion is that remaining Wednesday early release professional development days be curtailed in order to add additional school hours that can be accumulated. Under state law, 5 additional hours is equivalent to 1 day. Given the very limited professional development time available in the Portland Public Schools, this suggestion has been rejected. It's our recommendation that the last day of school be communicated as June 21st, regardless of additional no school days. And I should say that June 21st, that last day, would be a Thursday, given that the Portland Public Schools exceeds the maximum required days of school by 3 days. This recommendation is based on the assumption that there will be no more than 3 additional snow and no school days. And I would ask you to flip the paper for those of you that are following along, because there's a very important last paragraph about Hall School. At Hall School, there's a great deal of packing and moving to be completed during the last week of school. It is recommended that the last day of school for Hall students be June 20th, so that staff may devote all day June 21 and June 22 to moving. Hall School staff will also be offered a paid 0.5 day on Saturday, June 23rd. Significant time has also been made available to staff for packing throughout the late winter and spring on early release Wednesdays. And we have with us in chambers this evening Principal Dawn Keniston, who has done just an amazing job rallying her school staff and the school community around this amazing endeavor. And we thank you for that, Dawn. I'd be happy to answer questions, help you join me in a no snow dance, whatever moves you.
Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis.
With Hall School, is what we're suggesting here is that Hall students will have 1 day less than others?
That's correct.
I know from having...
Yeah.
What?
Good point. So it's actually a 0.5 day, because Hall School students would be having a full day on what would be their last day, and on the next day, which will be the last student day for all of our other students, it's a 0.5 day.
Okay.
So it's really a 0.5 day difference.
Okay. I'm just aware that I have already received some concern from parents who are worried about their students getting less school time than other students. So, I don't know how smoothly and whether there may be pushback, and I think that is legitimate pushback on some levels, that parents would want to get the same amount of time and not see their children getting less time because of packing.
And I certainly understand that. We all wish for the most instructional time for our students as possible, and it seems that a 0.5 day is perhaps somewhat reasonable.
I'm just saying we may need to, that may not seem reasonable to some parents, and I think they have a legitimate point.
Any other questions? Mr. Rodriguez. Any other questions? Ms. Thompson.
Thank you very much for going over that. I had a quick question for you. I know that you were, or that there was an exploration of a field day or something of that nature. Did that not come to fruition?
That is something that doesn't seem to fit into the plans as they stand now.
Okay.
That isn't to say that there might not be something like that, but it's not nothing about the ending of the school year is contingent upon that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Ms. Morioni.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, why wouldn't we just go ahead and say the last day of school for all students would be June 20th instead of having just 0.5 added to one school? What was your rationale of even having just Hall separated out? Why wouldn't we just do June 20th?
So we could do that if you wanted to cut back another day. I was looking to have our full component of school days for all of other schools, with this particular very small exception made because of the fact that we're leaving the original Hall School and have to be packed and out so that things continue on the next Monday morning.
Can I add something on that point? I think that we may not have covered this, but the building has to be turned over on the 26th, so that following Monday. So we are completely out of time at Hall. So that's, I think, the reason for asking for this adjustment. Otherwise, and that's why we didn't ask for the other schools, because again, we believe that. That week is already, it plays itself out fully. We just need the extra time at Hall. So.
Any other questions before we move into comments? Comments? Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. So I just wanted to remind the board that the teachers at Hall Elementary have already been put through a pretty significant dynamic year. A lot of teachers already last year had to move their classrooms to accommodate for some of the classroom changes this year. And then now, in less than a year, we're asking them again to pack all of their stuff and move them once again. These are teachers. These are not movers. And some of these classrooms have a lot of stuff. We're not talking about the stuff that you and I bring into our meetings. We're talking about a lot of equipment, heavy boxes, and they're literally doing it on their own. I know that there's some assistance. I know that, for example, the 5th graders could have activities with the teachers that help them pack, but think about the kindergarten teachers who are dealing with 5- and 6-year-olds while they're trying to declutter a classroom, get things ready, and conduct their normal educational responsibilities. I believe these teachers have been put through a lot of stress for the last year, and they've performed magnificent work. I have a handful of friends, close friends, who are teachers over there, Dawn. Some of which I spoke with even today, just prior to this meeting. I relayed a message to the superintendent on a separate matter from one of them. And so I feel perfectly comfortable allowing them the extra time to pack up and avoid rushing things, again, to avoid adding to the stress that we've already put them through. I think that's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Atkinson.
I just want to mention briefly a conversation I had with another parent this morning at the Longfellow Playground, who was asking. Mic on. Who was asking about when is the last day of school going to be. So I'm very glad to have a concrete answer for him. But I think that perhaps there's an opportunity here to do something to communicate this more effectively in future years. As we rack up the snow days and the last day of school shifts, it would be really nice if there was a convenient place for parents to go look at the website and say, June 21st is the day, on a as close to real time basis as we can. Yeah, that's sort of a countdown clock. But parents have reached out to me saying, I need to figure out childcare for the summer. I need to work out my camp schedule, whatever, figure out when they're going to do whatever that next activity is. And we know how important summer activity is and summer things are for our students to keep them engaged in learning throughout the year. And so I think it would be a service to us and also to the parents in the community if we can be on top of that. So maybe something we can think about for next year. Yeah, and also I guess communicating this decision, if this is the decision to have the 21st be the last day, really making sure that that gets out there in whatever manner we can, so that folks are aware that that decision's been made.
Thank you. Ms. Morioni?
I might be in the minority here, but I'm still going to lean heavily on the fact that all of our schools should end June 20th. Also because having to voice my own, watching when it gets close to the week, that it's the final week, I know that teachers work really, really hard to try and keep them engaged and keep them learning, but I feel like, again, having all the schools end on the same day would be a huge just a huge benefit to, and not just separating out hall and trying to explain all of that to even other parents around the district. So I would rather see us ending June 20th, half day then, and keeping it consistent. And I like Tim's suggestion too of this, if we could actually put this even, I know we can never predict it, but I've had a lot of calls by parents as well, because camps start that week that we're about to cut into, and so it affects, their enrollment in camps and things like that. So their summer keeps obviously getting shorter and shorter, but I'd love to even hear from students what they think or what they would say about those last final days, if you really are learning a lot, and whether this discussion even really, I would love to hear from you guys.
Ms. Yuri?
Final exams for school kids.
Hi. So I just had a question, Ms. Morioni, or Ms. Crocker. If we ended on that June 20th, would that mean we only had those 2 days of wiggle room for if there were 2 more snow days?
So we really can't have any more snow days. We're done with them. But while I have the microphone, just sort of pointing out that at our high schools, it's final exams.
Yeah. So what happens if there are, forbid, more than that amount of snow days? Like, what happens?
It is our intent that it will end as we are proposing here, and we have that luxury because we have 3 extra days in our calendar. However, we're going to go to school.
Just to be clear, so we're proposing that if we have an additional day, which of course we're not going to have, but if we had an additional day, we would come back to the board and ask to reduce one school day from the calendar, so that we can actually communicate this is our last day, we're done. The only time that we couldn't do that is if we have more than 3 days, in which case we have a problem. But
yeah, and I'd also like to speak to what I've heard from Ms. Morioni about sort of the effectiveness and the efficiency of the last day of school. And I think for me, or especially at Casco Bay, that really is a day to close the year as a community rather than an important structural day of the school. However, I also do think it is an important day, especially for juniors who this is their last day of the last traditions of school before becoming seniors and graduating. And I think it is a really important time. Like, even that just half day is sometimes nice for us because we go out and do our cardboard boat races, and especially before we have final exams. So I don't know, it's just a nice time to come together as community. So rather than it being an important structural day that parents will really miss, it's more something for us as students and as a community to come together and just have closure as a year. So yeah, but I wouldn't mind if it was on June 20th. So just to put that out there.
Ms. Clater.
Thank you. First of all, I do agree. I would not mind if it was June 20th, especially as I'm trying to set up my own summer, and I know other students are trying to do the same with especially students who are going to be working over the summer. It's important to get our schedules kind of set up. And then additionally, I kind of just thought of this, but with the talk of the teachers at Hall School having to do a lot of packing, as you said, over the past year, if we did end on the 20th, I would not be surprised if between me and the other student reps we could get a body of high school students who could go on the 21st to help those teachers pack up. With not having school, we could pay that back. I'm absolutely positive we could find students who would be more than willing to help with that. So, thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to add, this is more of a question, maybe Dawn can help us answer. So my understanding, and this is part of the quick talk that I had with one of your teachers, the last days you guys have conferences and you plan to kind of go over what going into the new building will be like and some of the details to kind of hit the ground running, so to speak. Am I getting that correct as part of the last day? Yeah, please. I just want to add to the picture of what that last couple of days in that building is going to be like for your staff.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you please just state your name and your title?
Dawn Kenniston, principal of Hall School.
Thank you.
Our plan currently for those days is to dedicate them totally to the closure of Hall School. So the all day Thursday, all day Friday, Saturday morning for anyone who's available. And then in August, we have planned a retreat, and we've done several staff-wide surveys to try to select the date that most people are available. That day will be dedicated to operational transition planning, so that by then we'll have a really good sense of the site and the building, and we'll be able to establish our operating norms. And then another day that will probably be staggered. It's our hope that it will be staggered for different teams within the school to have access to the building, even though the building won't be turned over until August 24th. So in theory, teachers will have 2 days, one day to get into their teaching space prior to the 24th, one day that we will all be together as a staff to plan for our transitional operational procedures. And then the first 2 days of school, we'll try to dedicate as much time as possible for settling in, but we will need to have an opportunity for at least a half a day and maybe a little bit more to be together as a staff to make sure that everyone is ready to receive children. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So just to kind of what my takeaway is when I hear that is, what I said a moment ago, that, the teachers at Hall Elementary, we're asking a lot of them already, just out of what the transition requires. So I think allowing them the extra time to not be rushed through this process I think would be good practice on our part. And I want to add that I'm inclined to agree with Ms. Morioni's question proposal of having the 20th be the last day for the entire district. I'm like I said, I'm just inclined to it. I think as a parent, I see it kind of helping me out a little bit. I don't know how else to put it. It certainly is not. It's about Marnie and me. So all joking aside, maybe not all joking. I do tend to. I'm inclined, like I said, to agree with that idea. Yeah, that's all. Before I say this.
I think Mr. Atkinson, you had a comment first.
Yes, and forgive me for being off topic of the snow days. I just wondered if there's any, speaking of Hall School and sort of winding down the use of that building, if there's any sense of ceremony around, having some gratitude for that building that served our district for 50 or 60 years. I don't know. I'm sure that we're going to have a big celebration when the new school is built. But this building that has significance for community members, I hope that we're going to, give it a fond farewell.
Should I say my name again?
Please.
I'm Dawn Kenniston, principal of Hall School. We actually had a big ceremony last year at this, I think it was in May, where we invited back all of the alumni and got out all of our memorabilia and really gave everyone, advertised it as an opportunity to say goodbye and to come and visit and to bring your friends and your family. And we had an amazing turnout. It was really a wonderful Saturday event. So I think from our perspective, we're feeling like we're looking more forward to how do we celebrate the opening of the new school. I know with children, we will probably do something on those last couple of days to bring closure for them. And we haven't really thought that out yet, but in terms of the community, we feel like that was done really well.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Anything else? Ms. Morioni.
I don't know, I was just thinking, and Dawn, you might be able to speak to this too, but as Isabel was saying, with having high schoolers come out to help out, sign up, how is it going with PTO and getting parents involved with helping to pack up, including board members that could help to come out, trying to make it more of a community effort possibly, if you think that's a good idea, and how that could be organized. And I don't want to add more work to your plate of getting it done, but I agree with Roberto saying that this isn't, shouldn't fall on just the teachers. This is an exciting time, and to make it even, to get the media out there to show, wow, this is a community effort to get this done, because this is going to happen hopefully 4 more times,
Yes.
in the future. So, yeah.
So, again, we, as you all are, have been waiting to see exactly when those last days are. There's a really strong commitment. I really appreciate, Roberto, your comments, because the staff at Hall School has been really amazing in terms of their diligence and their thoughtfulness around this process. And they're working really hard, and did work enormously hard last year as we moved 12 classrooms for the demolition of one section of the building to start the process. We would love anybody who wants to come back with us. We are trying to do things like closets and filing cabinets, or units that we've already finished, things that can be packed that are seasonal, but trying to maintain the presence of our classroom learning environments to the best degree possible for as long as possible. So that last week is going to be really intense in terms of need, and we'd love to put it out to the community. We know our parents are on standby just waiting for schedules, but everyone within our community is very aware, and I had tears in my eyes when I heard you speak to high schoolers coming down. That would be really lovely. We would welcome anyone that wants to come and help.
Ms. Thompson.
Actually, I have just 2 clarifying questions. One is serving on the building committee for Hall School. I know that we have a lot of new furniture coming. So a lot of the furniture that is there, we will not be taking with us. So is that something? Oh, hello.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's fine.
So a lot of that stuff, will that go quicker, you think? Some of that stuff, are we recycling that? Are we donating that? Or what are we doing with the stuff, because we're having all the new movable equipment? I'm just curious.
So a couple of things have happened recently. One is we had anticipated having a couple of rooms on the pre-kindergarten wing as transition rooms, because that wing will be the first wing completed. So we had hoped to have access to it at the end of April, beginning of May, and we could literally start to bring things over in sort of storage manner. But some things have transpired that have caused that to change. So right now we're investigating off-site storage for things that we are keeping and taking, and then a site for things that we are not taking but that are still in really good shape, so that other schools can be invited to look at those and see if there are resources that they would like to use. And then there are places like Ruth's Recyclables or some of the other smaller community schools that might want donations or might want to take some of those things. There's also a small committee that's looking at some of the hardware in Hall School, like beautiful doors and shelving, and thinking about what would happen if we made a plan to try to sell those in some way to bring more money to the unfunded playground needs. So we're thinking about that, and also thinking about, for those of you that are more familiar with Hall, there are beautiful pictures, design that are very close to people's hearts in the decoration of the outside of the building. So we've been able to, with the original artist, make a plan to take the original photographs, because the condition that they're currently in is not something that we can bring into the new building. But we have the original photographs, and we'll be framing those to put on a wall of the new building, so that memory will come with us as well.
Great, thank you. And just 2 follow-ups. And again, I don't know who can answer, but maybe Ms. Crocker. This is a suggestion to the board, so we're not taking an actual vote right now, and I assume it has to go on the agenda for us to vote, or are we it's just a nod, or? How does that take place? And then if
Would
you're-
only be a vote if we actually had to reduce the number of days. So
What I was wondering is because if we do amend your suggestion to Ms. Morione's point and do the 20th for everybody, does that require a thumbs up, thumbs down? Because it's not obviously an official vote right now. So just give you some sort of direction. Is that what you're looking for?
So if you, for us to do anything other than just to make a modification for Hall, we would need to bring it back. We've talked about it. We'd bring it back at the next meeting for the board to consider, reducing that half day for students on the 20th.
So I guess what I would ask is, and I don't know if Chair Pro Tem or whoever wants to take some sort of indication from the board if there's a will of the board to want to entertain the 20th, and if so, that way we can prepare for a vote. Otherwise, we can just give you a nod to Mr. Atkinson's point, so the parents can plan. So if there's a will of this board to want to change it to the 20th, I just think we need to give you some sort of indication this evening. While it's not a vote, I think you need a thumbs up.
I guess I would prefer two things. One, we have a storm predicted for Wednesday night into Thursday, so there's a possibility that we will. So instead of trying to deal with that piecemeal, I think that we should just, let that play itself out, and then you can indicate to Chair Trevorrow and myself to include in a future agenda item if we need to. So.
Okay, so you're saying don't do any thumbs up, thumbs down, just let it play out.
We don't know if we're going to have another day.
Yeah, I get it.
So it's like,
Okay.
that's my...
1 inch?
Well, we heard 3 to 6, so...
All right. Thank you.
All questions? Ms. Moran, you had your hand up before.
No, I like the idea of giving some indication tonight.
Go ahead.
Ms. Davis.
I'm just curious why it would take a vote of the board to change it for the entire district, but it doesn't take a vote of the board to change it for a school, for one school. That seems like that would, and as I say, I've had parents raise this issue. They're concerned the instructional time for their school is getting used to pack rather than learn. Although packing can be useful, we can probably make that into a good lesson. But they were particularly concerned about the time at the end sort of getting chopped back. So I guess I'm not sure why it would take a vote to do it in general, but it doesn't take a vote to do it specifically.
So I don't know that it doesn't take a vote. I think we were treating it similar to the way last week Peaks didn't have school because we had an emergency when we had the wind closures. There were a couple schools that didn't have the day that everybody else was back, so I was treating it in that same vein. It wasn't, so I'll be happy to bring it for a vote.
Yeah, I guess I do see it as different. We've known what the date of handover. We haven't known about snow, but it's kind of one we can see coming as opposed to kind of an act of nature at the moment or an act of the boiler quitting on us or whatever, or the oil leaking. I see those as a little bit different, and I suspect some parents may, and it may just be some, I don't know, but there may be a few. And
I'd like to add that I have some very strong memories from a couple years ago when the board was very clear that cutting a lot of work went into having 178 days, and there was great sensitivity to maintaining those teaching days.
Ms. Claytor?
I certainly understand your worry that parents will be worried and are already worried about cutting into students' instructional time. I also want to recognize that over the years, especially as an elementary and middle school student, those last couple days are usually used for celebration. Not that, and I think in some ways it's just as important as the typical educational things that we do, because you're celebrating students' accomplishments throughout the school year and everything, and that taking a half day off, while parents might be concerned from a student's perspective, would not make a significant difference in educational time. And for high school students, at least at Portland, it would just mean that our finals, if we did change to the 20th, it would just mean that our finals are shifted by one day. So I think overall, in terms of instructional time, it would not make a significant difference from my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Ms. Rodriguez.
You guys know I like to talk. I just wanted to add, when we were talking about the volunteering, they say that you can tell who your friends are when you need to move and they show up. So I just wanted to offer my help, and I have a pickup truck, if that means anything. Those are the good friends you want to keep. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments? All right. Given it's before the hour of 10 o'clock, is there any public comment on items not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Mr. Atkinson, is there a second? Ms. Davis? All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. We are adjourned at 8:31.